So with the idea that you're still boxing the king up, eventually wanting to give a mate, and look at that, Hikaru immediately creating a space and escape route for the king to come out if needed.
Ooh, still feels like Magnus should have a big advantage here. He can still trade a set of pawns and then push his 2 central pawns forward against one of Black's. 2 pawns normally in an opposite color bishop game, they say it's always halfway between a win and a draw. 2 pawns in any other endgame, you're just winning. Opposite color bishops, that's the one thing saving Hikaru here. He needs to somehow trick Magnus into exchanging rooks. Otherwise, I think Magnus is going to win this game long term.
Rooks off the board, that's an instant draw in this position. You hold this. But Magnus isn't going to let that happen.
Magnus would rather give away all 4 pawns of his own than trade rooks in this position. You need those rooks in order to kick away the black king, in order to force your own pawns through to the other side of the board.
So the dream for Magnus would be to get the rook to the square, dislodge the king, and then try to push his own pawn. But anytime he falls back with the rook, the defensive resource that Hikaru has is sliding his own rook down, challenging it on that last rank.
Do you think we'll see rook and bishop versus rook? If Hikaru is able to give up his bishop and his 2 pawns for all of White's remaining pawns, rook and bishop versus rook is a draw with best play, although a dangerous one.
A dangerous one, but I think Hikaru holds that. At this level, the technique required, to know the defensive setups, Hikaru's got to know it. He's had to have practiced it so many times in his life, and there are certain positions that you have to be extremely accurate to avoid getting checkmated. But David, that's still a far way off. Magnus is going to try every single trick in the book before he allows that to happen, and then he'll play on for another 50 moves.
True, and we sit here for another 6 hours. That would be fun.
Have it.
But 5 minutes for Magnus, 5 minutes for Hikaru. Positions like this, I will say, far harder to defend than they are to attack. Magnus can just move his rook around for 5 moves, gain a few minutes on the clock. And without ruining his chances, Hikaru will need to be accurate.
And take a look at that split camera shot that we had just a moment ago. 3rd place matchup happening just on the other side of that wall there. I wonder if Fabiano and Vincent can feel the intensity through that wall. They're a bit more in a drawn position right now, or at least, again, more of an even game state. I wonder if they have a sense that Hikaru and Carlsen, at this point, the gloves are off, and Carlsen's looking for the finishing touches.
I wonder if Fabi is still interested more in what is happening on the Magnus board, or is he finally focusing on that 3rd place fight that he had? Understandable with the way this game developed at the start, the fireworks that we saw early on. But right now, this looks like it's headed towards a vintage grind. Magnus trying to sort of squeeze some sense out of a dried up bottle. But here it's not so dried up. You've still got a lot to play for. The 2 extra pawns, the rook's alive, and Magnus, he does take the decision to advance the central pawn, eventually hoping to trade the flank pawn and then push them in tandem.
Yeah, given a question mark his last move, I was going to say actually all moves look roughly of the same value here, but maybe there's something concrete wrong with Magnus's last move. Maybe Black's going to push his own pawn forward, I say hesitantly. It starts to get a bit chaotic. The one thing I will say about this position in general is that it plays into both of their strengths. Magnus, endgame grinder. I know that. He's written books on it. He's done it all, endgame grinds. But Hikaru, the best defender. So both of them playing to their strengths here.
More pawns traded, the better it is for Hikaru, right? And he's trying to get one of them off the board already. Keeping that sort of philosophy in mind, for Magnus, does he keep the tension? Does he trade? Or perhaps try to get a passer of his own in this position by advancing that pawn 1 step forward?
Yeah, I would love to step 1 square forward, but the white king is in some trouble. The white king suddenly could get checked by a black pawn, be forced all the way back to the back rank. Let's put that on the board. These are not the moves. We're just showing everyone at home. Now the black rook would come in. Suddenly the white king, not so happy, would have to abandon some of its own pawns. And maybe some counterplay for Hikaru Nakamura here.
Wow.
Yeah, and peculiarly, that e4 move by Magnus, more accurate would have just been a less committal move of e3.
Just to keep pawns on the board.
Yeah.
Just to stop the white king from getting pushed back. Makes a lot of sense.
There's no way now that he's gone all the way with the pawn moving 2 steps forward that you can actually avoid trades. The rook lines up against the black king. Don't have the time to pick up this pawn. There's a deadly check that's being threatened on the board. Let me just put that. You fall back with the bishop. You win the rook on the next move. So Magnus still delaying the pawn trade. And also want to point out, David, that if you try to sidestep, I think white can just jump in with a check, force the king to that square, and then fall back with the bishop and win the rook.
Yeah, discover check. And what happens if Hikaru goes for that variation we just mentioned? He's about to reach for his pawn. I think he's going to give a check.
That did not happen. This is the check that we were talking about.
This is the live board. Hikaru yet to move. He's looking away. Process of elimination. I think he's got to give a check.
Just
Take the white
check.
king back.
Best move in the position.
There are 2 non-losing moves, but the best one is this f4 check.
I think unsurprisingly here, you need to kick the white king back. You also gain time to put the black rook on a light square. The black rook needs to be on a light square to avoid all of those discover checks that Tanya was showing there. Otherwise, you just lose your rook. Oh, wow. This feels like a critical moment.
I was going to say, in some ways, this feels like that second chance that Magnus is giving you to get out of this game. And if you don't take this one, if you don't find it here and now, you're never going to get that third chance.
And he finds it.
Wow.
He plays it.
Finds the first one.
Such a critical moment. The king will drop back now.
And now you could get out of the way, place that rook on a light square by giving a check, and that's momentum, forcing Magnus's king to the back rank.
Wow. Wow.
He's finding all
We've
the
got a game
moves.
again.
It's game on. Is Hikaru going to at least partially neutralize the material deficit and be brave enough to capture this side pawn?
I don't understand why Magnus went for something so forcing like this. I think Magnus in tip-top form would have just not allowed any counterplay, would have found a way to press slowly. But suddenly, rook takes pawn. That's a very important one, Tanya. It's not about the pawn itself. It's also about the fact that you, from behind, stop white's pawn from marching forward. Suddenly, white's got 2 pawns on light squares, easy targets. I'm really confused.
What do you guys think about our prediction now?
All right.
Got anything to say
You're just going to
about
keep
that?
bringing it back to that,
Not
aren't
letting
you?
go until Vegas now.
That's fair, actually. That's reasonable.
2 months of bragging.
Bragging rights.
It'll be well earned, I would say.
You gotta give me that.
It'll be
It was
well
a very bold prediction at the moment.
I think
James.
it was at the moment. I think the majority of the world in that moment
Was
had
against me.
the faith, yes, in Magnus Carlsen to get it done. And yet here it is. The defensive mastery on display, of course, had to be given an opening. No! I said it at just the wrong moment.
Oh my goodness.
He moves his bishop away. It's very unclear the point of that move.
What?
Does Magnus have an immediate knockout? Does Magnus Carlsen have a win right now?
What? He's got many.
Many wins.
That 2 that give a 6-point advantage, and then a third option that still gives him a 2-point advantage, all better than what
My
he just had a
goodness.
moment ago.
Why would he not pick up that pawn? Why would Hikaru let this slip like this? And this was the moment. Everything under control. Just get greedy with it. Bishop to a2, the bar shoots up. This is lost. What's the move?
I mean, the first I think might feel fairly obvious to some people, right? That H pawn was attacked. We were asking Hikaru to pick it up. Okay, naturally, let's just get that pawn out of trouble. Move it to H4. The second option, bishop move with discovered check.
Wow. Pawn to h4 is really clever. It stops the black rook from going behind as well. You're asking black to block that line from behind. I think you can win by force in that variation.
He's reaching out for the bishop. He gives the check. Is this the check that you were talking about as the second
That's the
strongest?
second best, but just by the tiniest margin. It's still a 6-point advantage here for Magnus Carlsen.
It's the same idea. The black king now, if it goes back, white will be able to push the pawn forward with gain of time. The white bishop is coming around to control that corner square. Hikaru realizing now, he shook his head. The bishop is coming around. It's unstoppable. That bishop getting to the long diagonal, covering the promotion square of that pawn.
Oh my goodness.
And he realizes, it dawns on him.
No.
That was the moment. That was the moment. It was in his hands.
There was no reason to move that bishop.
It
that
wasn't
makes
even
no sense.
This game, I mean, he literally...
Oh my goodness.
He was in such a tough spot the entire way. He held, he found his way back into it. He was right there.
And he's about to resign.
And realization sets in.
It's the Nepo, look to the right, just before you resign. That white H-pawn is just going to promote.
And he knows it, and Magnus knows it as well. That it's all turned around in a matter of one move. What made Hikaru move that bishop? Not under threat.
And there are some tactical details here. Magnus can actually win in a variety of ways. If the king steps up the board, I think he should move it next to the pawn. I think this is the best bet, and Magnus can win this in so many ways already. At the very least, you can play this move that James mentioned, pawn to h4, just to block the h-file, stop the black rook from coming in from behind. There might be other ways. You can give a check with the white rook first, as Tanya was pointing out.
Then just push the pawn, and nothing stopping it from queening now that the h-file is under white's control.
Yeah, same idea. I think even in a different order would work. Giving a check first with the white rook. The black king cannot hold things. Look at Hikaru. He knows he's just self-destructed on this last move. The most obvious move there was to take the pawn. It was by far the best move, the most logical move. And yet he didn't see it, maybe.
And the most heartbreaking part is that he had done everything right until that point. You know, got the knights off the board, holding on a difficult position, and he realizes that this is gone.
Oh, my heart breaks for him in this moment.
One move. One move. So close.
Yeah.
The kind of move you'll think about for a very long time as well. You're going to want that one back. Hikaru wants it back right now. It's not an option for him, obviously, so he's using that last minute and 30 seconds on the clock to see if there's any other resources available to him.
I don't even know if his mind is there. I think he's just thinking about what he missed. It was so important for him to use this moment to grab this pawn, to get the rook behind Magnus's queening pawn. All of the winning ideas are based on the white pawn moving 2 steps forward and then eventually queening regardless where Hikaru moves his king. And both of them know that's what's coming up next.
Yeah, the rook would have been actually very safe as well behind that white pawn, safe from all these discovered checks that we might be about to see. Just hard to explain from Hikaru. He had nearly 5 minutes when he made that move. He should have spent all of those 5 minutes then and there, because the rest would have been quite straightforward. But hard to explain, hard to fathom.
It tells me he felt there was something in that move.
Magnus Carlsen is seconds away from getting his first win here of this big finals clash. And just when it felt like it was slipping away.
He never gives you a third chance. And unfortunately for Hikaru, though, it comes at a mistake of his own here, giving it back in the end. 20 more seconds.
He could have an hour on the clock and it wouldn't help.
No, I'm just saying 20 seconds until we see that handshake extended. He's going to let the time run out here.
10 seconds.
Thinking on what could have been.
He's just going to let this run out.
Could have bought himself a draw, could have entered day 2 on even footing. There's the handshake. Magnus Carlsen, the world #1, takes down Hikaru Nakamura in day 1 of our finals here in Paris, France. You can see the disgust for Hikaru, disgust in his own play.
Magnus asking him why he didn't take the pawn. Magnus said, I missed it as well. You could just take the pawn. And Hikaru just shaking his head. I think he just missed it. A mutual blind spot there.
And he's still looking at it. He can't believe it. He's still figuring out why didn't he do it so close to actually wrapping this one up, to saving this critical half point. Hikaru